another piece I learned in VC, 99% of the time when you get a no from VC, it has nothing to do with you. Anytime someone asks you, anyone, what do you do for a living? What are you trying to build with your startup? Use that as an opportunity to really fine tune your pitch. It's like, building a sculpture. You have to chip away at it. The systems work for the people. People don't work for the systems, right? Everything you don't do in Dubai is to make your life simpler. None of it is to make your life harder, which is not the same in every other country. So that mindset, there's always something that can be better.
Welcome to the Sandpit Startups podcast, where we journey into the minds of the brightest and the best the region has to offer. We're here to connect the founders in the studio with the founders and entrepreneurs sitting and watching at home. We sincerely hope the next half an hour or so motivates, educates, or inspires you. And if it does, you know where the follow button is.
In today's episode, we're joined by Ajinkya, the founder of CrossVal. It's a startup which has been recognized by Deloitte's Fast 50 program. It's basically an AI-powered SaaS model which helps with financial modeling, amongst other things. They have various kind of clienteles that we will touch on today, and also go a bit back with Ajinkya, how he started this concept, his experience in the VC field, and also how founders can use CrossVal to take their startup to the next level. So thank you, Ajinkya, for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you guys.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. I feel like this is going to be a value-packed episode because it's a startup servicing startups. Yeah. So there's like 2 layers for us to go into there.
Yeah, I hope so.
But how's that been for you? Why did you decide to help startups or sort of like play in that space?
So it's just happened that I had an idea and I was like, okay, what do we do from here? I set the company up and my network was in the startup space because I've been at a VC and then did a short stint at a PE fund, and everyone I knew was in the startup space. So if I had to sell whatever I had to sell, it had to be in that network. And that's really how it wasn't a strategic choice or anything.
Kind of sounds like it a bit.
As much as I want to say that, is
just being modest.
As much as I want to say that, yeah, it was just the first place to go. Eventually, I realized that, this is actually a great place to sell because it's quick feedback, quick decision making. I'm realizing that now as we scale into sort of growth stage companies and enterprise clients, it was so easy selling. It is so easy selling to small startups because they know exactly what they want. They know what the problem is. Yeah. There is 1 or at max 2 people that you need to convince. Yeah. As soon as you go from a startup to even like a Series A or Series B company, it's tough. Like you have to convince the CTO, you have to convince the CEO, the CFO, and then everyone's got their whole emotional angle to it, where there's internal things you need to take care of and make sure you're adding value to everyone's job. So it gets tricky, but yeah, it's a dream to just be able to sell to startups, collect feedback. If you're making money off it, like if there's revenue and profit, good. But even without that piece, right, it's such a quick decision, and there's always feedback in there. Like, hey, this could have been better, that could have been better. And they're quick to make a decision. So
yeah, I wanted to ask you in terms of selling, because you said you speak to a lot of startups at various different ranges. How do you balance that emotional side of things with the logical side of things? Because a lot of these founders are like very tied in love with their startup. So you've got that emotional connection, but then you've got like the VCs and the investors that are like a bit more to the point,
more clinical.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So I used to be that. I used to be like, I'm a rational person. I have no emotional bias. And over the past sort of 2.5 years of building this company, that's one of the things or one of the areas I've had to really grow in, where you have to accept that every human being, no matter who it is, we're all emotional beings. Some of us don't accept it, like me in the past. And we come up with a rational reason to justify whatever that emotion is. And it's the same with investors, angels, VCs, everyone, right? Not everyone can be forthcoming and accept this, that, hey, this was an emotional decision to invest in this company. Because of course you've got LPs, you've got a fund mandate and you can't say things. But generally an investment decision will be based on, I like the founder, I like how he thinks, I like how she thinks, I like where the company is headed, it's all I like, and it's
Right.
usually at least the first decision to double click on a certain company is an emotional one. After that, you've got your rational safeguards in place, but the decision is really based on at least pre-seed, seed. Yeah, I like the team, I like what they're doing, and I like how they work. With the startups, yeah, of course, founders are super emotionally invested in what they're doing, and that almost makes it simpler, because if you can be empathetic and let them know that, hey, throughout this process of whatever product or service you're selling to them, you'll always have customer support, customer success. You're vested in their success. They're more than happy to work with you, right? And the same for me.
Right.
When we work with external entities. How invested and how willing are you to help me out when things might get difficult? Is the decision
you did
making.
mention that you have been in venture capital, so you have worn the venture capital hat as well. So just trying to connect the dots with CrossVal. So did you see when you were VC that there were certain things that founders were struggling with, and was that something you wanted to plug with CrossVal? And probably you could just touch upon what CrossVal does for founders and other enterprises.
Absolutely. So again, going back to university, studied engineering, finished 4 years, realizing finished 4 years realizing I really enjoy this. I really enjoy building things, but I don't want to build a car or a rocket or any of those things, because that takes forever, right? I want to build things that are a bit quicker. And that's when I was like, okay, VC sounds interesting. There's a bit of tech, which I always liked. And there's a bit of numbers. Did my level 1 of CFA. That helped a little bit, get my foot in the door.
Yep.
And the rationale was really at that point, let me interact with founders, let me interact with investors. I'll get an idea of what entrepreneurship looks like. And yeah, that's why I started CrossVal, because I started seeing from these founders that, hey, financials, financial modeling, spreadsheets, usually a tricky subject. And then the second half of the problem was my own, spending 16 hours of my day just on a spreadsheet. And I would look around me and I'd see like MBAs from the best universities and all of these guys doing the same thing. And I was like, there has to be a better way. No one's really solved this problem as a whole, like the whole finance spreadsheet problem, because there's no one in that industry who thinks that way. Whereas Monday.com, for example, you mentioned earlier, has been solved, because in project management, you do have people, or you do have engineers who have a certain problem-solving tech mindset. Whereas in financial services, it's just been a case of, growth. How can we add the most value to our clients? No one's tried to go back and start from scratch and think, hey, how do we make this a simpler process? So that's, I guess, where it happened for me. That little bit of engineering and that ability to tinker mixed with, okay, here's a problem that we can fix, came together. And when we started, the focus was, let's simplify a very small piece, which was valuations. Very quickly realized that actually the problem is much bigger. And then from there, we've sort of zoomed out into financial processes that are typically done on a spreadsheet. We want to that's the real problem we're solving. That covers a lot, but the piece we focus on is FP&A, which is financial planning and analysis. And like I said, we do it for 3 segments. One is startups, early stage companies. That's been 95% of our business so far. That's essentially what we use to develop our product, build the company, get our early revenue in. From there, Q4 of last year, we were in DIFC's FinTech Accelerator, which allowed us to open up to enterprises, larger clients. And since then, we've been, of course, iterating there and getting more clients there as well.
Nice. So in terms of the startups that you speak to and help, of course, I feel like with a lot of startups, particularly ones that have like these bright ideas, new exciting things that they're so in love with, in a lot of cases, maybe their background isn't quite as financial as yours, and a lot of sort of investors as well. What are kind of the pitfalls that they fall into when it comes to their financial planning?
Yeah, I think a big one here. So we do a lot of sessions with accelerators just to We understand that the top layer of CrossVal or the top of the funnel of CrossVal starts with education. And if we can solve that, the business will grow as well. And in that education piece, we're doing two things. One, of course, we talk to a bunch of accelerators. We do mentorship, advisory sessions, just to give back to the ecosystem. And the second is we're building something called CrossVal Academy, which is a central education platform. There's another thing I realized: there's no easy way to learn finance. You have to go do a CFA, do an MBA, pay someone a ton of money, right? So that's what we're trying to solve with Academy, where these are free learning tools for founders, early stage employees, whoever. Regardless, across both of them, the common aspect that we like to focus on is get into a habit of maintaining records, of tracking things. Do it with a pen and paper, do it in your diary, do it on a spreadsheet, do it on a fancy tool. Just keep records of things. Let's say 2 years into the business, you've got no financial data, but you've tracked every transaction. An analyst or AI or whoever can come in and sort that out for you. But yeah, that's I think, single most important thing, because a lot of us have this habit of, I'll remember that, it's okay. And then quickly you're doing 100 transactions a month, you're paying 5 people, you're talking to 2 suppliers, there's 10 tech tools you use, adds up really quick. And there's only so much you can rely on your bank statements, right? So yeah, the number one sort of most basic thing, just track it. Someone can, even if you have 10 years of data, like just line items, it's okay. Someone can come in and fix it for you. Or someone can come in and, build a financial statement out of it.
Because if you want to exit and you can be like, okay, here's what we did in this year, but there's nothing to back it up. It's like, well, that year didn't exist. Not quite, but you got my drift.
Exactly. And it's the same for everyone. Because of course, when you start, it's your personal credit card or your personal bank account, and it's mixed in with no, me too. Like it's all of us. Even now, like so many times I'll be like, the company credit card's left, because you don't use it every day, so it's left at home. There's an Apple Pay option. Okay, I'll just pay from my card, and I'll remember it. Right? Rarely happens, but that's the number one habit I tell people: just track it, like pen and paper, no problem. Someone will come and fix it.
And you again mentioned being in VC, so I feel you must have been exposed to so many founders. So you had a lot of data points while you were creating the platform, but being in the VC space, was it much easier for you to raise investment for your startup as well? And I believe you will be raising another round in the near future. So how has that journey been? And I'm sure you must have used CrossVal for this also.
Well, it's one of the things we get all the time. Do you use CrossVal? Of course.
No.
No, I don't think being from the sector helps you in
no brownie points.
No brownie. If anything, it's people are more skeptical as to you should have had this in place, you should have had that in place. There's a bit more pressure, but there is early conviction. People, at least our angel investors, all of them were like, hey, you're from the industry, you understand something in this space, you've spotted a niche problem. Maybe not, I mean, VC is not our market, but startups, it's having interacted with founders helped. But being in VC doesn't really, I mean, once you're out, right? Like there's no brotherhood or anything of sort. And the funny part is our batch of analysts across different VCs, we're all doing no one's in VC anymore.
Really?
Everyone's on there. Sorry?
Have they become entrepreneurs or?
A few of them are entrepreneurs. A few of them are in product. No one's in the UAE, in fact. Everyone's living their digital nomad life. I think COVID really brought about our quarter life crisis, where everyone was like, actually, maybe I don't want to do this VC thing. So it's funny how that works out. So no real brownie points, but of course, I understand what the process is like. Another piece I learned in VC, 99% of the time when you get a no from VC, it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with your company. 1% of the time, maybe there's a mistake in your data room or the idea is just not there. But 99% of the time, it's something to do with the fund or
the
thesis or the mandate or the LPs making a different decision or whatever. I know this. It's still hard to hear a no, but it rarely has to do with your company.
So it can often be just like one small factor of the financials that really puts off an investor.
It could be one small factor in the financials, or sometimes it could just be like you just couldn't click with whoever you're speaking with in the fund, right?
Fair enough.
Let's say the two of you work for the same fund.
Yeah.
We have a chat and nothing, right?
Yeah.
There's no spark. We have a chat and you're like, oh shit, Ajinkya's onto something.
Yeah.
And then you go back to your, VP or your partner and you're like, oh my God, you have no idea about this deal I heard about.
Yeah.
And then that emotion gets carried forward. And lots of times VCs are desensitized to this emotion now because nothing's really exciting anymore. When you're seeing 100 decks every day. So of course you have to figure out a way to stand out, but a lot of times like companies get lost in the process of, it's just slow. And of course, but anyway, this is just to make a founder's life easier because it's hard.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to hear that no, and it's hard to process that no. And most of the time it has nothing to do with you.
So you've done your own pitching, and right now you're currently doing some fundraising, and also your tool helps with pitching to a degree. What tips would you have for people pitching, looking for fundraising?
I think number one, just practice.
Okay.
Try and pitch as much as you can, wherever you can. I think one of my professors in university was like, I was super against speaking on stage. Not against, but I was just shy or scared or something. Against makes it sound like I made a decision. No, I was just scared. But yeah, the professor, she told me that this is the only time where there's no stakes, right? Every other presentation you do in life after graduating, there's gonna be something at stake. Even if you're like a super early stage employee somewhere, there is something or the other. And she's like, practice as much as you can when there are no stakes, because when there are stakes, it gets harder. And I try to use that same logic. Anytime someone asks you, your mom, your uncle, anyone, what do you do for a living? What are you trying to build with your startup? Use that as an opportunity to really fine tune your pitch. It's like, building a sculpture. You have to chip away at it. You'll never be at the final product, but chip away until you can talk to a layman about what you're trying to do. And then there's extreme mastery where you can explain your mom or your grandmom what you're doing. I'm still not there, but
with finance it would be a bit difficult.
But just talk to people and try to of course, don't go on like a 10-minute pitch with everyone. It's gonna get tricky. But that 1 minute you get with a lot of people at networking events and stuff, try and get to that aha moment where they're like, oh, so you are X or Y, right? As soon as you hear that response, you've got somewhere, right? You've got them thinking for you. I think the biggest piece of advice, just chip away at your pitch and practice it when it doesn't matter, so that when it does matter, you've got it nailed down.
I think just listening to that, it sounds like it should be a dynamic type of thing. So you've got your long versions, you've got your basic versions, you've got your advanced versions, and then depending on the scenario, like say you've got someone that absolutely knows their stuff, and you've only got them for like 30 seconds. You've got to use your short advanced version, and then there's someone where you've got like a coffee chat with them, but they're not too queued up. You've got your long basic version. So mix and match.
I always ask the person before starting the pitch, what do you do for a living? What's your background? To gauge what angle I need to take, right?
Clever.
So if they're an investment banker or they've come from the finance space, it's super easy.
Know your audience.
I can skip the fluff. But if they're someone you run with, or they're an engineer, then you can't really start with financial modeling, right? I have to start before that. You can always, like, my version for that is, so I have a friend who works in engineering, and I know that a piece of software in engineering does something similar to what CrossVal does. Now, he doesn't need to understand the whole picture because he's not an investor. He's not. But it's someone I'm talking to, and I'd like them to understand. And you can quickly pick up examples like that. That'll help people understand. But like another one we came up with, or I came up with, was you've got Photoshop and Canva. So how Canva replaced Photoshop for 95% of the people out there. That's what CrossVal is trying to do for Excel or Google Sheets or spreadsheets, right? You'll always have the 5% who's very comfortable with Photoshop, but the other 95% who just want something simple, we've got CrossVal. So try and come up with as many of those as you can, because that really simplifies the pitch.
And this strategy would probably also help with angel investors when you're pitching to them, because they are not having a specific knowledge of the industry that you're pitching with. So if you are able to sell it to different kinds of people, so you'll be able to sell it to different angels, and angels are ones who have, they are high net worth individuals who have spare capacity to put in money in the startup. So this is definitely a nugget that many entrepreneurs should take in. I also have used the same kind of approach as you mentioned.
Yeah.
But you also have raised angel investment. And how was that journey? Did you raise it from, let's say, the Sandpit we call here in the UAE, or was it a little bit globalized from maybe neighboring countries, friends and family?
No, it's all from the UAE.
Okay.
Angels, primarily guys who are, they're working at successful corporates. They've found their niche in the economy, as you could say.
Right.
And now they're looking to back early stage companies. Some of them from the ecosystem, some of them out of the ecosystem. One of them, actually, this is my favorite story. They signed up. They actually, you guys probably know this person. We'll probably discuss this after, but
Yeah.
we had a coffee. He's like, oh, this CrossVal thing sounds cool. I was like, yeah. I was like, he's like, what's the pricing? And we chatted about it. He's like, oh, that's really steep. That's very expensive. Startups are paying for this? I was like, yeah, they are. And unfortunately, there's like, we want to bootstrap. So there's no like discounts or free, extended free trials or anything of the sort.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, cool, fine. We talked 6 months later. Luckily, he's raised around at this point.
Okay.
He's like, okay, I want to sign up. Let me try the product. I need what you're offering. I was like, cool, sign up. 6 months after that, he's like, dude, sick product. Can I invest in the company? 2 months from them, writes us a check.
Whoa.
And he's one of our most supportive angels that we've got.
Nice.
But yeah, honestly, angel investors can come from anywhere, right? Like there's no label, no one's walking around with a tag. It could be friends and family. It could be anyone you meet, at a coffee.
Networking.
Yeah, absolutely. The first angel we got on board, Sucker, I literally messaged him on LinkedIn. I was like, he liked a post of mine or something. And I knew of him through someone. I knew of his existence because this friend of mine used to work at the same company. And you know how LinkedIn shows you like someone else's like post or something?
Yes.
I guess I was just feeling brave. So I would never do this, right? Like in the past. Now, because this worked out, I'm okay to do it. But in the past, we're like, oh my God, invading someone's inbox like that. Just send him a message saying, hey, I see that you've done engineering and then ended up somewhere else in life. I have a similar background. I'd love to, chat. And he just sends me his phone number.
Okay.
Yeah, he's super cool.
Nice.
And I know that he'd do it for anyone, like even now, right? Give him a call. He's like, hey, I'm here day after. Why don't you drop by? We chat. 3-4 months in, he signed us a check. That was the first check. And I was just like, oh, so interesting. This is how it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, literally, just talk to people, share what you're trying to do. Usually, again, one of our other angels has said this. If you go in looking for money, you'll get advice. If you go in looking for advice, you'll usually walk away with money. So just be open to advice, hear out what people have to say. And yeah, unfortunately, there's no list of, again, I've looked, there's no list of angels. There might be one, but it's not going to do you much. Because again, it's always
there's a
emotional
list, they've been approached a million times over the past year or so. It makes it, so networking or referral plays a huge part in this.
Absolutely. I mean, referral is the big one, right? If you can get warm intros, it's a game changer.
Priceless,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we kick ourselves if we didn't touch on valuations.
Yeah.
Because it's such a big part of everything. You can even see it on Dragon's Den and Shark Tank when there's an over-evaluation. They just scoff at it and, really drag on it and try and chop it down.
Yeah.
But would you say the risk in undervaluing yourself?
Tricky. The biggest risk of undervaluing yourself is it's good. It's okay. Ideally, it's good to be just a little undervalued because then the expectations from your investors in the next round aren't as high.
Okay.
Because if you're overvalued, you're in trouble. You have to really push your metrics for that, Series A or even your seed round. Whereas in pre-seed seed, you're better off being slightly undervalued, at least in my opinion, or at least having a safe note that has a reasonable cap where the investors feel comfortable being a part of that journey, right? Because early stage, that's what you're trying to do, especially if you're a first-time founder. You're trying to drum up interest and validation in your company, and people backing you with their capital is just that, right? Be it as an investor, or be it as a client or a user. But typically, if it's an early stage deal, there's very little risk with being undervalued. You want to be fairly valued with wherever the market is, and you can just do research and figure out what that number should be, or what what financials work out for you to be at that number. And then as you grow, the problem gets smaller because you've got more bigger investors and then you've got more data. But being undervalued is not all that bad all the times, unless you're getting like this horrible deal where people are like, oh yeah, I'll give you $100,000 check for like 50% of your seed stage startup. That's don't get into deals like that. But if I think I forget his name, Eden Rabi, I believe. I could be getting it wrong. Anyway, Clear World, it's like this data report type of thing now.
Okay.
They publish benchmarks on what valuation should be.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's a good place to start if you're just trying to get like a basic idea of where you stand. And they have it split by pre-seed, seed, and Series A, I believe. And they have it for like every country, like Dubai, KSA, Egypt.
Okay.
And that's a wonderful place to start because you can quickly gauge, okay, I raised at a 5 million cap. That's in line with what you would raise in KSA. So a bunch of resources out there that can help you do that.
Yeah, because I've seen many a few pitch competitions where they're first-time founders, just because they have AI in their startup, they're valued at $10 million, and I'm like, this is not how it works, buddy. The investors also then find out that if this person can't use logic in perhaps getting a decent valuation, how would he probably run the company? So it raises a lot of red flags in the minds of the investors. So it's important to do the homework. But if you have a tool, for example, I can just give you a small example of mine. When I meet with investors for raising my seed round, they usually ask, what's the valuation? So I try to take it much easier, thinking for the investor that we could have a safe note round, as you mentioned. But some investors ask for, okay, we'll do an equity round and get an audit report of your valuation. And that makes it much difficult for me because as a startup, we don't have that much data points. All the potential is in the future. How can I value it now? If I probably go with a revenue multiple, it would allow me to give away 40% of my equity, 50% of my equity, and then that doesn't make it. There's not much incentive for the founder then to work for the company.
Absolutely.
So I don't know would CrossVal solve my problem with that?
Yeah, so the first 6 months of the company, this is all we focused on, right? Because we thought valuation is going to be our whole market, and let's just solve this as well as we can. So we put together a bunch of data, multiple benchmarks, all of this stuff. Now, of course, we don't publish it because at some level it does work like our secret sauce. But yeah, it does solve for this, right? Where you can very quickly get an idea of, hey, if this is what my revenue structure looks like, or this is what my pricing model looks like, this is what my cost structure looks like to get to that pricing model. Here's how much I have to spend on marketing. Here's how much I have to spend on hiring people, and here's how much I'll earn as a result of that. As a combination of those three, we can put together a valuation that makes a lot of sense, both for the company, for the investors, for your future rounds. So the cool thing with using a tool like CrossVal is it can solve multiple equations in one go without you having to do a bunch of research, put together a spreadsheet. Because one of the few risks of being undervalued is you're not going to have incentive to work for the company in the future, because it's tricky being a founder sometimes, because once you build that first company or do the first 1 year of building a company, you very quickly realize that, hey, it's just process, right? Do thing one, do thing two leads to thing three. And if you're not incentivized in a particular venture of yours, you've got the courage it takes to do this all over again, and it's very easy to go do it somewhere else, right? Which is why it's important that you think whatever deal you come up with is a fair or feels like a fair, again, emotional decision, right? It should feel fair for you. If you've got 6 co-founders and everyone split whatever 12-13%, but it feels fair, they'll work, right? But sometimes you've got a single founder, they've given up 50% of the company for some deal, stops feeling fair after a point, it's not going to work out. So
I feel like that's quite overlooked because like myself as a founder, like I would never consider that I would be uninterested in my business. So I feel like it would be overlooked that like this is just impossible to even happen. But
it does happen. Because again, like it's not a very long journey, but it's a long enough journey that you can evolve a lot. Like the me that started this company and the me that exists now, not the same person, right? And you're forced to evolve because if you're trying to build or do this difficult thing, you're gonna have to get better at tackling whatever stress or whatever emotions that you go through. Because if that's not the case, you're just gonna end up being a very terrible human being.
Interesting. So I just wanted to ask as well, why are you in this? Why have you done this here? Was it just a case of you sort of grew up here and you developed your network here, or was this region sort of the target for any particular like strategic reason?
I think it's just home. Like I've been here. My family came here in 2004, 2005. Went to school, university here. Spent a semester in China, but that's sort of all the time I've spent away from home. And it just seemed like the obvious place to be. It very quickly, with post-COVID, it very quickly became the best place to be as well. Because you see a lot of entrepreneurs coming back here. And even like back home in India, a lot of startups actually just go to Dubai or Singapore. So there was no reason to go back somewhere else and then come back here. It just seemed like the most sensible choice, which again happened to be the best choice, which seems to be the case. I've just been lucky.
I feel that way sometimes. Like if I was in the UK, I probably wouldn't have started doing my own thing. Dubai just kind of not hands it to you, but like really helps. It really, really does.
100%. I think just I said this in some interview or something, and the whole country operates like a startup. And all the good parts of a startup, not the bad parts, not things breaking constantly. None of that happens, but they still have all the good parts, which is things change quickly, things change when they're not working. The systems work for the people. People don't work for the systems, right? Everything you don't do in Dubai is to make your life simpler. None of it is to make your life harder, which is not the same in every other country. So that mindset of entrepreneurship, or I guess perpetual optimization, is coming in from the way the country is run, right? There's always something that can be better, right? You've got your, I guess, visa process to your Emirates ID application. Everything's online now. It just blows my mind every time. I used to dread going to the, the government offices. Now you just don't have to. It's all online. It's incredible. Virtual.
It is very good. I like that term, perpetual optimization. How do you approach it with what you're doing?
I'm obsessed with it. Like everything I do in my life is I guess centered around perpetual optimization. Not that I've used the term before, but when I look back, I am very like numbers driven, very, hey, if you're not tracking it, it's not going to improve. Almost to a point where like that became the issue, where I was just so obsessed with the numbers that, it started to backfire with stress and, in a negative manner. But everything I do, from like my sleep and my food to my training, I try to get, what can be done better, what can be improved. Because literally building a company is just that. You need to get into that mindset. Of course, after the first 6 months where you found some sort of traction and you know what you're selling and to who you're selling, it just becomes, what's your funnel? Do you need to optimize the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel? You need to optimize your spend, you need to optimize your fundraise, whatever else, right? So, it's hard to not have that involved in your life when you're building a business, especially a tech company where everything can be connected and tracked.
Yeah, and also like implemented quite quick as well.
Yeah. Exactly. Literally, in today's world, you have no excuse to like, oh, I just don't know like this number. I can't fix it. Like literally, from like the number of hours you sleep to the number of hours you spend on Instagram to the number of hours you spend on YouTube, everything is being tracked.
Yes.
And of course, yeah, you can complain about it with data privacy and stuff, but then also the same thing can be used where, at the end of the day, sit down, look at your screen time, and then this is something I'm obsessed with, right? Every day at the end of the day, I'll look at my screen time and be like, okay, that's the amount of time I could have had in my day that I wasted. No, not wasted. Sometimes it's productive, but whatever. Right? You get the point. We can look at that number and be like, hey, if I'm saying I don't have time in my day to go work out or to build my side hustle, just look at your screen time. A lot of times it'll be like 6 hours.
Yeah.
You need 6. Maybe you could get away with 3 or 4,
Yeah.
and you have 2 extra hours in your day. But you can just keep optimizing numbers because everything's being tracked anyway. Anyway, we digress. But that's something I've been obsessed with recently. I don't know if you guys picked up on it, but
well, it kind of
Screen
sounds
time.
like it. Screen time, no.
yeah,
No, it's fair enough. It's the way they build those apps are like so addictive.
it's
So
nuts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
really.
It's just
Perpetual optimization.
yeah. I mean, that's what they're trying to do. Like
Yeah.
your time is worth a lot, and whoever can get it has it.
Yeah.
And if it's not you, then it's someone else.
Yeah.
So if you don't value your own time, Instagram does or TikTok does.
Yeah.
and
But
can
they
use
don't
it.
value it the same way we should. I feel like we should value it so much higher in terms of like, dirham per minute or whatever.
Exactly.
But theirs is just baseline. Like every
Yeah.
user is exactly the same,
Yep.
and they're all very cheap.
Yeah. In fact,
So.
theirs is dirham per minute or dollar per minute.
Yeah.
We should think of it as happiness per minute, right?
Yeah,
Because
true.
that same dollar or that same minute you spend on Instagram, you could spend with your family, your friends,
Correct.
your kid, whatever else,
Absolutely.
or just doing something you want in your life.
Yeah.
So it's valued differently. But anyway,
Yeah.
You mentioned that you were are you still part of the DIFC Accelerator program?
the program concluded, but yeah, we're part of the ecosystem. We're set up in DIFC.
Okay.
Our first POC was with DIFC.
Oh, great.
One of my close friends works for DIFC after all of this. But I mean, DIFC is a big
So
part of our journey.
how did the accelerator help CrossVal? Because we've had only a few entrepreneurs who've made it into these accelerator programs. We had someone else who made it into Hub 71.
Okay.
So we just want to understand how the ecosystem over here is for accelerator programs, and how did you benefit from it with CrossVal?
Okay. I think the big one with accelerators is it has to be niche. It has to be aligned with what you do. I've been through, I think I've worked at a couple of startups as well, and they were in accelerators.
Okay.
So I've been through most of them. I've done Flat 6 Labs. I've done Startup Bootcamp.
Okay.
I've done a couple more. But with my startup, with CrossVal, we've only done 2. One was Uniphonic X, which is a SaaS-focused startup accelerator in Saudi, and then the DIFC one in the region in Dubai. And with both, they were super niche, super tailored. The first one being SaaS, learn all the basics there. And then the second one, so DFC has 2 accelerators. One is like the very early stage one, and one is slightly, I guess, seed Series A.
Okay.
This one, the one we were in, I think it's called the DFC FinTech Accelerator. They just connected with corporates. It's a very cool system. I love it. No equity, none of that.
Oh, equity
Yeah,
free.
yeah.
That's fantastic.
I think it's 3 months long. There's a bit of learning, right?
Yeah.
From experts in the region. But the key value add is they pitch your startup to corporates,
Wow.
and they pitch the corporates' problems to the startups.
Oh wow.
And you essentially have this matchmaking that goes on.
Nice.
You get a 2-week period where you can put together sort of a proposal of what a proof of concept might look like with a particular corporate. You go in, pitch that proof of concept.
And I'm
see if
assuming
you
these
can-
are flagship names, so that
Yeah.
you can use those names when you meet with other customers, that X company's on board, Y company's on board. So
Absolutely.
that's a great stepping.
No, absolutely. They're
yeah,
banks. So from what I recall, there's Emirates NBD on there.
Okay.
There's Visa, the card guys. There's HSBC, I believe. Our POC ended up with Zurich Insurance. And it was excellent. Like that POC was 2 weeks long. We got some great insights. We built a super cool product for them. I think before we built that they had a spreadsheet-based process unit with a team of about 10 people who hated this part of their day. They'd spend about 2 hours on it. In total, the company is spending 600 hours a month on doing this.
Whoa.
In the POC we built, it came down in 9 seconds.
What?
9 seconds of just like server or processing time.
Oh my gosh.
With the humans involved, it'd be probably 5 minutes. But
I want to know what the percentage reduction is on that. That's crazy.
yeah, so stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Impossible without DIFC being the middleman, or DIFC's team being the middle person.
It's nice. It sounds like they give you a sense of like market research too, because they're telling you the problems that are out there right now in the market. And if you have something that's like kind of in that space, you can tailor it a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Based on that, without even ever speaking to them.
Exactly.
It's nice. You go into that pitch knowing exactly which angle you should take.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
cool.
And I think it's super valuable. I wish they are expanding it to where it's not going to be cohort based. So any DIFC company can access any DIFC corporate, because DIFC does a lot of like corporate. I don't know if it's venture building yet, but that's the direction they're trying to go into from what I hear about 2 months ago. But they're trying to make this like an open-ended matchmaking system, so that if you just set up in the FinTech Hive or Innovation Hub, you get access to all these corporate use cases that you can go and solve. So you could even just set up a very generic tech company, find one of these use cases, and then just multiply in that vertical. So it's very cool.
So unfortunately, we need to wrap up here.
No problem.
But for the people listening at home, if they're interested in what you do, where can they find out more?
Just CrossVal.com, and I guess LinkedIn, Ajinkya. Other than that, I don't have Instagram or anything, so
Fair enough.
mindful of my
Trying to
screen
get
time.
the screen time down. Good stuff. Well, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Not a
Thank you
problem.
so
Thank
much,
you for
Ajinkya.
having me.